First contact and fateful decision. Grand Admiral Vexterra stood motionless before the massive observation window of the Arcadian Empire's flagship, the Celestial Dominion. Her iridescent scales shifted colors in the starlight as she watched the small blue planet rotate slowly beneath them. Earth, such a simple name for what would soon become the Empire's newest conquest. Or so she thought. My Admiral, her second-in-command, Commander Rax, approached with a data crystal in his segmented hand. The preliminary assessment of the indigenous species is complete. Vexterra's vertical pupils contracted slightly, the only indication of her interest. After 3 centuries of expanding the Arcadian Empire across the galaxy, she had overseen the absorption of 17 different civilizations. This would be 18. Proceed, she commanded, her voice carrying the harmonic overtones typical of her species. The humans, as they call themselves, are a level 3 civilization on the galactic standard scale. They've achieved limited space travel but remain confined to their solar system. Their technology is primarily based on combustion and primitive nuclear fusion. Their military capabilities are— Rax paused, mandibles clicking in what might have been amusement— quaint. Vexterra's scales rippled with dark blue patterns of contemplation. Show me. The air between them shimmered as a holographic display materialized, showing Earth's military assets: chemical-propelled vehicles, projectile weapons, crude atomic devices, and a handful of orbital satellites that barely qualified as a defense network. Their global military force is divided into numerous factions, each loyal to different geographical regions they call nations, Rax continued. They spend considerable resources fighting among themselves. How typical of primitive species, Vexterra remarked. Have the standard terms of submission been transmitted? Yes, Admiral. We broadcast the ultimatum in all their major languages 12 orbital cycles ago. Rax's scales flickered with confusion. Their response was unexpected. Vexterra turned her full attention to her subordinate. Explain. They requested clarification on whether our demand for unconditional surrender was, in their words, some kind of joke. When we confirmed our serious intent, their unified governing body, the United Nations, responded with a single phrase: come and take it. For the first time in several cycles, Vexterra felt genuine surprise. Her scales shifted to a pale yellow of uncertainty. In all her years of conquest, no species had ever responded to the Empire's ultimatum with defiance. They usually understood the futility of resistance against a civilization capable of crossing the stars. Perhaps they don't comprehend their situation, she mused. Show them our capability. Target their largest military installation. Something suitably impressive. The order was carried out with typical Arcadian efficiency. A precision strike from orbit reduced a Pacific naval base to molten slag in seconds. The demonstration complete, they waited for the inevitable capitulation. Instead, they received thousands of transmissions, not of fear or surrender, but of rage. Humans across the planet were sharing images of their destroyed base, calling for resistance, unity, and something they called giving the aliens a proper Earth welcome. Admiral, a communications officer interrupted. We're detecting unusual activity in their information networks. They're creating something called memes about us, and their entertainment platforms are flooding with references to historical events they call Pearl Harbor and Normandy. Vexterra's scales rippled with irritation. Their primitive communication methods are irrelevant. Prepare the invasion fleet. We'll begin with their largest population centers and— Admiral, another officer called out urgently. We're detecting massive launches from multiple locations. Vexterra's initial alarm faded to amusement as she observed the primitive rockets ascending from Earth's surface. Their nuclear weapons are useless against our shields. Let them waste their arsenal in a futile. She never finished the sentence. The missiles weren't aimed at the Arcadian ships. Instead, they detonated in complex patterns throughout the upper atmosphere, creating a web of electromagnetic pulses and radiation that played havoc with their sensors. In the confusion that followed, Earth's surface erupted with thousands of smaller launches. Too many to track, too scattered to stop. Impossible, Rax whispered as the first wave of human counterattacks reached them. They turned their entire planet into one interconnected launch facility. Every vehicle, every building, every civilian structure. Vexterra watched in growing horror as the humans demonstrated exactly why they had so many different weapons and fighting styles. They weren't divided. They were diversified. Each nation contributed its own military doctrine, each culture its own approach to warfare, all coordinating in ways the Empire's unified tactical algorithms couldn't predict. As the battle in orbit intensified, Vexterra received one final transmission from Earth. It was brief, and in its simplicity lay a terrifying truth. Welcome to Earth. You're about to learn why we have so many different ways to fight. The Grand Admiral's scales shifted to the deep red of combat readiness. For the first time in her long career, she faced an enemy that didn't follow the rules of warfare as the Empire understood them. The humans weren't fighting like a civilization trying to prove its worth to join the galactic community. They were fighting like a species that had spent its entire history preparing for this moment, whether they knew it or not. The war for Earth was about to begin, and Vexterra had the unsettling feeling that the Arcadian Empire had drastically underestimated what it meant to fight humans on their home turf. The art of unconventional warfare. 3 planetary rotations into the invasion of Earth, Commander Rax found himself delivering the most difficult tactical assessment of his career to Grand Admiral Vexterra. The Admiral's scales had taken on a mottled pattern he'd never seen before, a concerning mix of frustration and disbelief. "Explain to me," Vexterra said with dangerous calm, "how we've lost contact with 17 ground battalions in less than 72 Earth hours." Rax's own scales rippled with anxiety as he projected the latest battle data. The humans, they're not fighting according to any known military doctrine. Admiral, they're using their planet's climate and terrain in ways our tactical computers can't predict. The holographic display showed scattered engagement points across Earth's surface. In the frozen wastes they called Siberia, an entire Arcadian mechanized division had been swallowed by the permafrost. The ground beneath them deliberately melted by redirected satellite arrays. In the Amazon rainforest, human fighters were using the dense canopy to launch devastating hit-and-run attacks, their primitive projectile weapons modified with stolen Arcadian power cells. In the region they call Finland, Rax continued, they're using something called ski warfare. Our troops are being attacked by humans who appear and disappear like ghosts, sliding across the snow on primitive wooden strips. His mandibles clicked in agitation. They're calling it Winter War II. Electric Boogaloo on their information networks. Vexterra's scales darkened. Surely our technological superiority is being turned against us. Rax interrupted, then quickly added, "Admiral, the humans, they're adapting our technology faster than we can prevent it. Look at this footage from their Australia continent." The hologram shifted to show a group of humans who had somehow modified Arcadian gravity manipulators to create what they termed combat kangaroo suits. The bouncing warriors were using the enhanced mobility to devastating effect against the Empire's methodical combat formations. Their information warfare is equally concerning, Rax added. Our neural networks are being flooded with something they call spam. Our troops are receiving endless broadcasts of what appears to be culinary preparation videos and small felines engaging in amusing behaviors. A junior communications officer nervously approached. "Admiral, we're detecting a new type of transmission. The humans are. They're broadcasting their battles live on something called Twitch. They're adding commentary and something called donation alerts to combat footage." Vexterra's scales pulsed with incredulity. "They're treating this war as entertainment." "Not just entertainment," Rax corrected. "They're learning from each other in real time. Every successful tactic is immediately shared, analyzed, and improved upon globally. They call it open source warfare." The tactical display updated again, showing a new threat emerging from the region called Silicon Valley. Human engineers had created hybrid weapons by combining their primitive digital technology with salvage Arcadian quantum processors. They called them jailbroken alien tech, and they were wreaking havoc with the Empire's carefully coordinated battlefield networks. "There's more," Rax said hesitantly. "In what they call the American Midwest, they've modified our sonic weaponry to broadcast something called country music. Our troops are experiencing severe psychological distress, particularly from something called Cotton Eye Joe." Vexterra watched as another holographic report showed humans in the Indian subcontinent who had somehow adapted Arcadian energy shields into what they called tech-enhanced cricket bats. The resulting impacts were destroying armored vehicles with devastating efficiency. "How are they coordinating all of this?" she demanded. "Their communication should be in chaos." "They're using something called meme logistics," Rax explained. "Critical information is encoded in what appear to be humorous images and videos. Our sensors can't distinguish strategic data from what they call shitposting. It's remarkably effective." The Admiral's scales shifted to a deep purple of concern as she reviewed casualty reports. In urban centers, humans were using their knowledge of their own infrastructure to devastating effect. In New York, they'd turned the subway system into a labyrinth of traps. In Tokyo, they'd reprogrammed their entertainment billboards to disrupt Arcadian neural implants with seizure-inducing light patterns. Their resistance, Vexterra observed, it's not just military. Their entire culture is becoming a weapon. "Yes, Admiral," Rax agreed. "They've even turned their economic systems against us. Something called cryptocurrency miners are overloading our quantum communication networks, and their entertainment industry is already producing something called a battle royale game based on our invasion. The microtransactions alone are funding their war effort." A new alert flashed across the tactical display. In the region called Florida, humans had somehow taught local reptilians they called alligators to recognize and attack Arcadian troops. The locals were calling it peak Florida behavior. Vexterra's scales shifted to the pale yellow of uncertainty once again. The Empire had conquered species with superior technology, larger populations, and more advanced military traditions. But they had never encountered a species that could turn literally everything, from their primitive technology to their ecosystems to their entertainment, into weapons of war. And somewhere in the background of every tactical report, they could hear the humans laughing. Adaptation and innovation. Grand Admiral Vexterra stood in the ruins of what had once been an Arcadian forward command center in the region humans called Germany. Her scales shifted through patterns of dismay as she examined the wreckage of their most advanced battle platforms, now transformed into smoking debris by human ingenuity. "Show me how they did this," she commanded, her harmonics carrying an edge of desperation. Commander Rax activated a holographic replay of the battle. "They've created something they're calling hybrid tech strike teams. This particular attack was carried out by a group known as the Engineering Students' Revenge Squad." The hologram showed a group of humans wearing cobbled-together armor made from salvage Arcadian technology and what appeared to be gaming chairs. They moved with impossible speed, their reflexes enhanced by what analysis suggested was a combination of energy drinks and reverse-engineered neural stimulants. "They've somehow merged our quantum targeting systems with something they call aim assist from their primitive entertainment systems," Rax explained. "Their accuracy is unprecedented." The footage showed the humans using weapons that defied conventional military logic. They had taken Arcadian plasma rifles and modified them with components from something called super soakers, creating weapons that could switch between superheated plasma and streams of liquid nitrogen. The thermal shock was devastating to Arcadian battle armor. "Their technological integration goes beyond weapons," Rax continued, his scales flickering with reluctant admiration. "They've adapted our holographic displays to project something they call Discord overlays directly into their vision. Their battlefield coordination is chaotic, but extremely effective. A new alert caught their attention. In the region called South Korea, a group of humans had modified Arcadian battle simulators with their gaming technology. They were training drone operators using something called StarCraft mechanics, achieving swarm control capabilities that rival the Empire's best AI systems. The Silicon Valley developments have gotten worse, Rax added, projecting another report. They've merged our quantum computing cores with something they call machine learning algorithms. The resulting AI systems are, he paused, mandibles clicking nervously. They're beginning to predict our tactical decisions before we make them. Vexterra watched as the hologram showed another human innovation. A group from MIT had discovered that Arcadian shield harmonics could be disrupted by specific sound frequencies. They had created what they called a dubstep cannon, mounting massive audio devices on vehicles they called party buses. The resulting sonic attacks were not only destroying their shields, but had the peculiar side effect of making human soldiers fight more aggressively when exposed to something they termed sick beats. Their adaptation rate is accelerating, Rax noted. In the region called Japan, they've miniaturized our power cores to create something they call mecha suits. The designs appear to be based on their animated entertainment programs, but the combat effectiveness is undeniable. The tactical display updated with more concerning news. In India, tech support centers have been repurposed into electronic warfare hubs, using their experience with computer viruses to create devastating cybernetic attacks. They called it tech support, but spicy. Perhaps most concerning, Rax continued, is their use of social media algorithms to optimize their resistance strategies. They're using something called trending analytics to predict our tactical movements with disturbing accuracy. A new alert flashed. In Switzerland, scientists at CERN had combined their particle accelerator technology with Arcadian matter transmission systems. They were now teleporting small strike teams directly into Arcadian ships, accompanied by physics papers that were simultaneously winning Nobel Prizes and detailing new ways to breach imperial defenses. They're not just copying our technology, Vexterra realized, her scales showing the deep blue of revelation. They're improving it, making it do things we never considered. Yes, Admiral. In Brazil, they've modified our atmospheric processors to control weather patterns, creating localized storm systems for tactical advantage. They're calling it Operation Thunderstruck and insist on playing specific human music during each attack. The reports kept coming. In Canada, they'd adapted Arcadian thermal technology to weaponize the cold, creating what they called hockey puck grenades. Russian engineers had combined their expertise in heavy machinery with Arcadian gravitic systems to create what they termed hard-bass-powered battle tractors. Most disturbing of all, a global network of teenagers on something called TikTok had begun creating viral videos analyzing Arcadian tactical weaknesses. Their observations, hidden between dance trends and social challenges, were devastatingly accurate. Admiral, Rax said quietly, we've intercepted transmissions from their scientific communities. They're not just reverse engineering our technology anymore. They're theorizing improvements we never imagined. Some of their suggestions are, well, our physicists are both impressed and terrified. Vexterra's scales shifted to a color she had never displayed before, a mix of fear and fascination. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were accelerating their own technological evolution at an unprecedented rate. Every defeat, every lost piece of equipment, every encountered technology was being absorbed, analyzed, and improved upon by a species that seemed to take endless joy in asking, what if we tried this? And somewhere in a lab in Texas, a group of humans had just successfully combined Arcadian faster-than-light technology with something they called a monster truck, and they were very eager to show the Empire what they called space rodeo. The tables turn. The Imperial War Council chamber aboard the Celestial Dominion had never been so quiet. Grand Admiral Vexterra's scales had taken on an ashen hue as she reviewed the latest strategic assessment. Around the table, other high-ranking Arcadian officers displayed various shades of distress in their own scale patterns. "They've reached the Arcturus defense line," she announced, her harmonic voice barely maintaining composure. "Humanity has pushed us back 70 light-years from their solar system in less than 6 Earth months." The holographic display showed the current state of the conflict. Human ships, a bizarre but effective combination of their own designs and adapted Arcadian technology, were systematically dismantling the Empire's carefully constructed defense networks. Their vessels defied conventional space combat doctrine, ranging from enormous retrofitted cargo ships they called space technicals to swarms of small, agile craft that seemed inspired by something called anime space battles. "Their space warfare strategy is unprecedented," Commander Rax reported, his scales flickering with professional concern. "They've modified our own FTL drives with something they call hot rod engineering. Their ships are achieving speeds we thought theoretically impossible, often while broadcasting something called Eurobeat music." The tactical display updated, showing a new human innovation. They had taken the concept of their aircraft carriers and applied it to space, creating massive vessels that carried hundreds of smaller craft. But instead of traditional fighters, these carriers were launching what humans called space motorcycles. Single-person vessels that combined Arcadian gravitic technology with what they termed the rule of cool. "Their psychological warfare continues to evolve," another officer added. "They've begun broadcasting what they call recruitment videos across our communication channels. The latest one features their space forces performing something called a drift competition through an asteroid field, set to what they identify as Initial D soundtrack." Vexterra watched as the display showed yet another human tactical innovation. They had adapted Arcadian phase technology to create what they called space privateers, ships that could phase through Imperial defenses while their crews shouted phrases like yo-ho-ho and played something called sea shanties. "The human approach to space combat is..." Rax paused, searching for the right words. "It's as if they took every piece of their entertainment media about space warfare and decided to make it real. And somehow, it's working." The evidence was undeniable. Human ships were using maneuvers that Imperial tactical computers dismissed as impossible or suicidal, yet achieving devastating results. They had turned asteroid fields into what they called gravity sling racetracks, using complex gravitational mechanics to achieve speeds and attack angles that left Arcadian gunners helpless. "Their information warfare in space is equally effective," Rax continued. "They've begun hacking our ship's external speakers to play something they call boss music before engaging in combat. The psychological impact on our crews is significant." A new alert drew their attention. In the Proxima Centauri sector, a human fleet had combined their primitive radio technology with Arcadian quantum communications to create what they called space shanty networks. The resulting coordination between their ships was chaotic, but impossibly effective, with fleet movements that seemed to flow like some kind of deadly dance. "They're not just fighting us in space," another officer noted, her scales showing patches of worry. "They've turned their orbital infrastructure into weapons. Those primitive satellites we once mocked. They've upgraded them with our technology. Now they're using them as what they call orbital meme cannons, broadcasting psychological warfare content across our entire fleet." The display shifted to show another concerning development. Humans had modified their social media algorithms to predict Imperial fleet movements with disturbing accuracy. They called it Space Twitter Analytics, and it was making their ambush tactics devastatingly effective. "Perhaps most alarming," Rax added, "is their adaptation of our terraforming technology. They're not using it to change planets. They're using it to create what they call space highways, altering the gravitational topology of entire sectors to give their ships tactical advantages." Vexterra's scales shifted through patterns of disbelief as she watched footage of human ships using these gravitational corridors to execute maneuvers that violated several laws of physics. They had somehow turned space itself into a weapon, and they were doing it with a combination of scientific brilliance and what they called hold my beer enthusiasm. They've begun targeting our supply lines, another officer reported, but not in any way we predicted. They're using modified cargo ships they call space food trucks to actually feed our captured crew's Earth cuisine. The defection rate among our forces has increased by 300% since they introduced something called space tacos. The War Council chamber fell silent as they processed this information. The humans hadn't just taken the fight to space. They had fundamentally changed how space warfare worked. They had looked at the vast, cold void of space and decided it needed more style, more flair, and significantly more bass-boosted background music. And now, intercepted communications suggested they were planning something even bigger, something they called Operation Space Road Trip, which seemed to involve converting an entire asteroid into what they termed a cosmic monster truck. Vexterra's scales settled into a pattern that hadn't been seen in an Arcadian commander for generations. Resignation tinged with reluctant admiration. The humans weren't just defeating them, they were having the time of their lives doing it. A new galactic order. The Imperial Palace on Arcadia Prime had never hosted a diplomatic meeting quite like this one. Grand Admiral Vexterra, her scales now permanently tinted with the pale yellow of uncertainty, stood before the Imperial Council as they prepared to receive the human delegation. "Are you certain about their arrival method?" the Emperor's first speaker asked, their scales showing patches of disbelief. Before Vexterra could answer, a massive holographic projection appeared in the sky above the palace, displaying what humans called a countdown timer, accompanied by what they termed hype music. The Imperial Guards shifted nervously as the bass dropped. Right on cue, a human vessel materialized in high orbit. It was their new flagship, a vessel that somehow combined the most advanced technology in the galaxy with what they called monster truck aesthetics. The ship's external speakers, powerful enough to be heard on the surface, were playing something humans called Sweet Home Alabama. "They're making an entrance," Vexterra explained, her harmonic voice carrying a note of resigned amusement. Humans consider diplomatic negotiations to be, in their words, a chance to flex. The human ship, which they had named Earth's Got Talent, descended through the atmosphere with impossible grace for something covered in what appeared to be chrome spinners and neon underlighting. It landed in the palace courtyard on massive gravity-defying wheels, while its hull pulsed with patterns synchronized to what humans called EDM. The Imperial Council watched in fascination as the ship's main ramp lowered, accompanied by what humans termed entrance music and atmospheric fog effects. The human delegation emerged, wearing what they called diplomatic drip, a bizarre but impressive combination of formal attire and adapted Arcadian battle armor. "Yo, what's good?" the human ambassador greeted, using their neural translators to add perfectly timed bass drops to their diplomatic speech. "Let's talk about this whole galaxy situation." What followed was the most unusual peace negotiation in Imperial history. The humans presented their terms through a combination of formal diplomatic protocols and what they called PowerPoint presentations with extra spice. Their diplomatic AI assistant, which they had named Sassy Space Siri, provided running commentary that somehow made complex political proposals both comprehensible and entertaining. "Look," the human ambassador explained, displaying a holographic map of the galaxy, "we're not here to take over. We're here to vibe-check the entire galaxy. Here's our proposition. Why fight when we can collaborate?" The presentation that followed showed humanity's vision for the future. They had already begun transforming captured Imperial military bases into what they called space truck stops, interdimensional rest areas that served both as defensive positions and cultural exchange centers. Their space food trucks had become so popular that several Imperial worlds were experiencing tourism booms. Your empire's got the infrastructure. The ambassador continued. We've got the innovation. Plus, they added with a grin, we've noticed your troops really like our music and food. Did you know we've got thousands of different types of tacos? That's just the beginning, fam. The Imperial Council watched in a mixture of horror and fascination as humans outlined their plan to upgrade the galaxy's whole aesthetic. They proposed combining Imperial faster-than-light technology with their entertainment systems to create what they called the galaxy's first space-wide streaming service. And check this out, the ambassador said, activating another hologram. We've already started establishing what we call cultural exchange programs. Your engineers are absolutely loving our video games, and our engineers are doing wild things with your quantum mechanics. Did you know you can use quantum entanglement to make what we call spaced TikTok? Vexterra's scales shifted through patterns of amazement as the humans presented data showing how their approach to technology and culture had already begun transforming the galaxy. Imperial worlds that had adopted human innovations were experiencing unprecedented growth in both technology and quality of life. Even their primitive memes had become a highly efficient form of intergalactic communication. Here's the deal, the ambassador concluded, bringing up a final display. The galaxy's big enough for everyone. We're proposing what we call a collaborative hype civilization. Your empire brings the foundation, we bring the innovation, and together we make the galaxy absolutely lit. The proposal was radical, unprecedented, and completely contrary to thousands of years of imperial doctrine. It was also, the Imperial Council realized, essentially impossible to refuse. Humanity had already begun transforming the galaxy simply by existing in it. Their influence spread not through conquest, but through what they called cultural osmosis. Also, the ambassador added with a grin, we're already planning the first intergalactic space festival. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens when we combine your quantum physics with what we call rave technology. One by one, the Imperial Council members' scales shifted to colors of acceptance. The galaxy was changing, and humanity had made it clear that everyone could either join the party or miss out on what they called the biggest glow-up in cosmic history. As the treaty was signed, ratified, and immediately turned into what humans called a viral sensation across the galaxy's new social networks, Vexterra reflected on the strange journey that had led to this moment. The Empire had sought to conquer Earth, only to find themselves being peacefully absorbed into humanity's endless celebration of existence. The last transmission from Earth's Space Defense Command summed it up perfectly. Welcome to the galaxy's biggest crossover episode. Let's make it epic.